Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about a new Smallville sequel because we got an update coming from Michael Rosenbaum himself, and we're going to be talking about some news in regards to a DCU show that is coming in the next couple of years. We got details to do with that and potentially when it could be starting to shoot and when it's going to be released. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos later this year. Okay, so for those of you guys who follow my channel actively, you have notifications on, you watch every video, you know that we've reported on the Smallville sequel happening. Now, we talked about two separate Smallville projects specifically. There was a movie sequel that was proposed. It was about Tom Welling being willing to come back if they did a movie. But the most likely possibility, and I'm pretty sure it's going to happen at some point in the near future, just based on all the information that we have, is the Smallville animated sequel that Michael Rosenbaum is working on. Now, he went to Nashville Comic Con this weekend and he confirmed a few bits and pieces about the Smallville animated show. And so I'm reading off of a Krypton site article, so go check out the article, you can read it, it's in the link in the description below. And so Michael Rosenbaum has offered an update about the Smallville animated project when asked about it this past weekend at the 2024 Nashville Comic Con. So the quote is, "Tom Welling and I are working on a Smallville animated series that we're trying to get made." So he confirmed to the moderator on that day. He says, "It's gonna take time, but the creators of Smallville are attached," so they're officially attached. That's really, really good to hear. "They want to be a part of it. When the time is right, we'll pitch it. We've been working on it and we have some loose animation that we've worked on with someone who was just awesome. It looks great, so if we can get that made, that would be awesome." So he didn't go into much more detail about the specifics of the show, when they're going to pitch it, but it is an actual concrete thing that is going to happen at some point if they pitch it. And I want to specifically hone in on him saying that they've actually got some animation. They've already got a guy to go in, do some loose animation, so that when they go to that eventual pitch to Warner Brothers and DC, they're like, okay, this is what we got. It looks great. We have this story. This is what we want to tell. We want it to be a sequel to Smallville. And I'm really liking what I'm hearing here because I didn't know about the animation being actually done, well, in terms of like a small little bit of animatics to show off, but that's really good because that proves that this project is moving along and we have the attachment of both Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling along with the Smallville creators. So as I said before in a previous video, having those four there, that already sells the project, and we know the rest of the cast is down to be a part of it, and so the project is primed and ready to go. But hearing that there is some animation already done, that means they are further along the line than even I thought. I was surprised when he first said this, that they were at this certain point, but he's actually further along than I thought. So I think it's a matter of time about when the time is right to actually pitch this project. Now, obviously, DC is very preoccupied right now as they try and build out the DC universe. Luckily, Michael Rosenbaum is good friends with James Gunn, so he definitely can pitch this. Obviously, James and the rest of the DC universe guys will have to like it. They will have to say, yes, this is a good project, we can approve it, because yeah, even though James is in charge of the DCU along with producer Peter Safran, they're actually in charge of the whole of DC. It's not just the DCU, even though that's their main focus. So it would have to go through them if it was to be confirmed and actually given the green light. So I think at the moment they're probably too preoccupied, and that's why this hasn't been pitched yet. But with everything at the stage it is right now, I would say in the next year or so, I would expect them to go ahead and pitch it. I don't expect them to tell it to the world that, oh, we've gone to Warner Brothers, we've gone to James Gunn and DC and said, you know, listen to us, this is our pitch, here is some animation, this is what we want to do. I don't expect to hear that. It's not going to be public unless he goes to these Comic-Con events and gives little like bits and bobs of information about this project to us. But yeah, I wouldn't expect it anytime soon because DC's focus is on the DCU right now. But let's continue talking about Smallville, because at a convention, but not the same convention, Tom Welling was there talking about his cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earths in the Batwoman episode in part 2. Obviously, he returned as his Clark Kent. It was a slightly different version of him, but it's inferred to be the same Smallville Clark Kent because, you know, he doesn't have powers, and that kind of hints at, you know, the fact that Smallville was very much so against showing him in a superhero costume. I really liked that in that episode. But basically, Tom, at the Talkville event with Michael Rosenbaum, was recorded by Krypton site. I believe Craig, who runs the site, was actually at the event. And so they were talking all things Smallville, and he discussed his return to DC in Crisis on Infinite Earths as Clark Kent. And now I've got some quotes to go through. There's an actual video, so I'll leave the video in one of the links in the description below so you can actually watch Tom Welling talk about all of this and talk about his return. But I'm going to be just reading out some quotes and discussing this. So Tom basically said this: "They had asked me to kind of bring Clark into some of their other shows, and it didn't feel right. So I guess Supergirl asked them, potentially Superman and Lois has asked them, and I guess if there was any other like multiverse crossovers, they probably asked him in the past, which he confirms here. But when they sent me the Crisis script, they were like, just read it. And so it was one scene, and I read it, I was like, this is a really good idea." If you watch the video, he actually explains it in a much more fluent way, but, you know, he kind of sighed in the middle of that because I feel like Tom was always a bit reluctant to return to DC, but now after Crisis and being super involved in the Smallville fandom, doing the podcast with Michael Rosenbaum, going to events with him, hosting their own events as well, like Talkville, I think he is very much open to returning again, and that is why he has talked about his involvement in that animated Smallville sequel, because I think he's 100% on board with that. But continuing to talk about Crisis, Tom talked about how the Batwoman crew for that episode of Crisis wasn't familiar with the Kent Farm location, so he was kind of helping them out and kind of explaining stuff about it. But as for playing Clark again, he says, "It was really fun because I was able to kind of bring Clark back again, but a little more grown up." And then he said, noting that he had tried to do more mannerisms like John Schneider, who played Clark's father in Smallville, with the gloves and the way that he walked. And he says, "My favorite part of the whole thing though was John Cryer when he says, 'I'm Lex Luthor,' and I'm like, 'You're not Lex.'" And he says that line was a lot of fun. It was one of the easiest lines I've ever had to read because this is Lex Luthor pointing at Michael Rosenbaum on stage. So yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes from that episode of Crisis. It was a great scene, kind of just bringing that Smallville side of things back to life in the Arrowverse, and also paying homage to everything that came before, like even just down to the way that he played his Clark and the fact that his mannerisms were more like his father in Smallville, obviously a fictional father. And so yeah, that all kind of ties in really well, and I just wanted to discuss this with you guys because I think it's just a sign for what's to come with Tom Welling, and the fact that he is so open about this, and the fact that he didn't really want to come back for a while. He had loads of offers from the Arrowverse shows and other films, I guess, and he decided to come back in Crisis because it was just a short scene. It was a scene that kind of paid homage to Smallville, and for the first time gave him the opportunity to come back in that world, and fans obviously lost their minds. But let's move on from Smallville. Let's get into something a little bit different. This is to do with the Green Lantern show, Lanterns, that's coming to Max. This news report is coming from Nexus Point News. Now, I don't know if this is a reputable source or not, so I'm gonna have to say, as always, take this with a huge grain of salt, but this is apparently an exclusive from them, claiming that DC Studios' Lanterns ramps up with new casting and production details after obviously the announcements that James Gunn made that Chris Mundy is involved, Tom King and Damon Lindelof have all been working on the screenplays for the episodes of Lanterns. But this site is reporting that apparently the series is currently eyeing to start shooting in Q1 of 2025 in the United Kingdom, and if production goes smoothly, this could set it up for a 2026 release date. So as I said before, I don't know if this is reputable. They don't list the source. They are not a big outlet. I mean, I've never heard of them before, but loads of people on Twitter and everywhere were reporting this, so I just thought I will cover it, even though I don't believe that this is factual news. This is just, you know, a potential rumor or a site trying to get a scoop, but let's talk about it nevertheless. As I believe there has been rumors that DC might be starting to set up in the UK at some point over the next couple of years. Obviously DC has been shooting more and more in the country, and so that means that, you know, they've got good relations here, and if they set up a proper production studio, you know, an offshoot of Warner Brothers for DC Studios in the UK, in London, wherever they want to go. I know the Flash shot in Glasgow, I know the Batman shot in Liverpool, so DC are no stranger to shooting in the UK, but it would be interesting if the TV shows start filming over here instead of filming in America. Obviously America, depending on the state, can be quite expensive. I presume the UK is a little bit cheaper, and I'm wondering why they don't go for Vancouver, why they don't go for Toronto in Canada. I believe it's cheaper, but maybe it works out to be similar. But obviously Warner Brothers has a big base here in the UK, so it kind of makes sense that they would try and eye to shoot future projects here. And so what do I think of Lanterns potentially starting to shoot in Q1 of 2025? So that would be the start of the year. Now that kind of makes sense in terms of the timeline, because Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is supposed to start filming in the fall, and so with that in mind, they're probably going to get maybe one other thing in production, potentially Waller. I don't know how likely that is, but if they start at the start of 2025 with Lanterns, that would kind of align in terms of the way things have been going behind the scenes, because obviously Creature Commander has been worked on first, and it's still been worked on behind the scenes with the animation. Now Superman has been shooting for a long time, since March, and Peacemaker began production a couple months ago, and so those are going to run into the summer, and then you'll get Supergirl coming up next, and then the question is, what is the next project after that begins shooting? I believe Lanterns could be that project, because we've heard a lot of news. It generally means that they are further along than other projects. So I would say aiming for the start of 2025 in the UK is definitely a possibility. Now I'm not saying that this outlet, this source, has proper information. I think they are speculating, if I'm being completely honest. But if this is true, this could definitely set up Lanterns to release in 2026. I mean, that is already my expectation. I think they got to get going on the TV shows as well as the films. They are just as important. Obviously, I want to see the DC TV shows, because, you know, that's just an area that I'm super interested in, and I know a lot of you guys are. But I think if you look at Marvel, the TV shows are kind of as important, even though the films are kind of bigger events. If you want to build a successful universe, I think you got to utilize both and kind of take on board what the Arrowverse did, and how, you know, they successfully built a great DC TV universe on network TV, but now they're doing on streaming, obviously. So that pretty much does it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. But for now, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.